Day.
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Excellent. Better now.
Yeah. Better now. What's that?
It's good to talk to you again.
It's great talking to you.
So what was that beer? Are you drinking now?
That was my son. He was, intending to have any icon sent to you. He was just like, okay, I have to send this and this and this. And I said, Jonas, I just want to be done with my day. And he ended up with a beer. So I was fine with that.
Well,
no beer today. Today is an off day, to say that.
Man, I miss German beer. That was the good thing about going to Germany. Like, there was not a Budweiser or a Coors Light to be seen in the bunch. All of the beer there was excellent.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And the variety is gigantic. And, wherever you go, you find another one. I personally also like Czech beer a lot. There's some really good one. But in terms of diversity, there's no other country able to compete with Germany. Some people really praise Belgian beer, but I do not really get that. It's good, it's decent, but not in comparison to Czech beer or German or Austrian beer.
We went to Berlin, Weimar, Potsdam, and Dresden, and everywhere we went there was a different local brew. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, there's so many, the deeper you get into the country, if you go to the south, it's unbelievable how many different brews you'll get there. And then you get to my area and you have a completely different taste. And we do have this, it's a dark beer, it's called Alt. And I absolutely love that. While if you go to Berlin, you have more the Pilsner style, which, is so great in the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
And you go to Bavaria and you have all that white beer and dark beer and smoked beer and whatever beer.
Dark beer is my favorite, personally. Köstritz is one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's good. But that's an Eastern beer, right? It's from East Germany.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so.
So what's one of the best beers that is in your local area then?
That would be Bolton Alt. That's maybe one of the oldest breweries in Germany, and definitely the oldest one for alt beer. And they have a particular brew, and one is called, extraordinary old, and I love that. It's very natural flavor, strong, bitter. Yeah, you get shit faced after that. No doubt about that.
Oh man. Yeah, and that's the thing, too. I live in Utah, and there are a lot of Mormons here, and we have very strict...
Yeah, right?
Yeah, we have very strict alcohol percentage laws.
Poor you.
So I have a couple of German friends in Potsdam, and they took me out drinking one night, and it took me only like 2 or 3 beers to get kind of... Because my body was not used to that kind of high percentage of alcohol, like the normal percentage.
To say that, it does not necessarily have to contain a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
And still, if you drink like 3 or 4 bottles, it's 0.5 liters or 0.33 liters, you may feel something already. And once you're drunk, you're drunk. I mean, there's no turning back, whatever you do.
You're done. You're spent, boy.
Yep. It sometimes causes headaches, but it's nothing in comparison to American beer. If you get drunk due to Budweiser, you're lost completely. I hate that because I've been in Florida in the 90s, and my wife got shit faced, and she was suffering for 2 or 3 days afterwards. Yeah. I mean, she's not the most heaviest drinker anyway, but she gets along with like 3 or 4 bottles of German beer and still is doing okay. And she may have some headaches the other day, but she was wasted. And ever since I know American beer is no good beer. I mean, there are a lot of good microbreweries,
exactly.
But you have to find them.
Yeah, Budweiser, Coors, all that stuff I don't care for, but there's been a lot of great microbreweries coming out.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised too, especially in the Philadelphia area. We found some really good ones.
Yeah, so you said you were doing a lot of promotional work recently. What have you been doing on that?
What we've done in terms of promotion was press, basically, some radio stuff, and we were traveling through all Europe and actually did the same thing via phone during the last 7 days.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Metal seems to be much more widely accessible in Europe, right?
Definitely. But even if we start promotion for the US, there are a few days occupied with work, and there was even the consideration of having us over for like 2 or 3 days to New York. That didn't turn out well at the very end because of timing issues. But otherwise, we would have made the regular promo run there as well. So it seems that, at least for Blind Guardian, things in general are going the right direction. I mean, there's sometimes that sort of vibe, and wave. And I have a really good feeling at the moment because everyone seems to be curious about the new album.
Yeah. Oh, boy. I have a lot of questions on that. But, I've always felt that if you guys had the ability to aggressively market in the U.S., that you would do very well. Because all of my friends who I show Blind Guardian, they're like, wow, how have I never heard these guys? This is badass, and especially I usually start people out with a Twist and the Myth because that's a bit more user accessible. It's one of your more kind of rock sounding albums.
Most European fans would disagree, but it is a nice album.
Well, I think it's a great album. I would.
It is a great album, yeah.
That's one thing I really like about you guys is every album you do something different.
That's the plan, and this is how we look at it. I can see that some people do not get along with it, but the overall aspect on A Twist and a Myth is very positive from our side because it has that mainstreamish, more modern attitude which attracts people. Open-minded people always, are really celebrating the album, while some of the fans more into the old school stuff, they have their issues with this album. But you cannot avoid this. It happens from time to time. I would really see every album as the right step into the right direction for the time they have been made. And luckily, this seems to be the case with the new one again.
Yeah. So I guess the new album is completely done. So when you get the final mix, how many times have you listened to the new album every day? Do you just listen to it every day, or is it like old news at this point?
It is sort of old at the moment because we have been so wasted at the end of the production, and I was forced to listen to it so many times during mixing that I tried to stay away from it for a while. So at the moment, I'm refreshing my experience with the album because it's still a newborn baby. And you need to get a little distanced from it to really, get to the point and really figure what the album might sound like for other people. But that's still too fresh. At points, I was listening to it like 4 or 5 times a day. I was forced to listen to it 4 or 5 times a day. Plus the 2 years we were working on it constantly.
Yeah.
So. It needs a little time in between sometimes before I really can enjoy an album. Usually, it takes me like at least 6 to 8 months after finishing an album before I really have a sort of open mind to listen to the album in a more consumer-related direction. Yeah. Right now, I'm still the producer.
Do you have any favorite songs on the album then? Any ones that you particularly really enjoy?
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine it must be like trying to choose your favorite child, but there's got to be some that you're more attracted to.
Yeah, but it's easier for songs than for albums, I sometimes feel. Still, there are like 3 or 4 songs I would rate on the same level at the moment. That would be The Ninth Wave, because this is going to shock people and then amaze people, I would say. I'm really impressed by the progression we have taken there, because this is really a step into a new direction. Then we have Sacred Mind. This is expression-wise probably the strongest song on the album in terms of my performance. People maybe will relate different to it in general, but I'm really proud about the output. It was just really a sort of performance art song, and I like that. And then the third one I would choose would probably be At the Edge of Time, because this was one of the songs I have had the biggest concerns.
Oh, really?
And it turned out really great, yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, I kind of felt it was just a matter of time before we had a song called At the Edge of Time. Just as At the Edge of Time! And the story ends, and then we have the album, the last album. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, you got the point, because I did not think about that line when we produced the album. And someone brought it up to me. And when we were working on this album and we were talking about concepts, and I finally made my decision to go back to Imaginations, I was like, okay, I've had the song, I've had the line in the song, I have named an album like this. It's a great title anyway, so why not using it for this one as a song title? It was fairly obvious.
Yeah, to me it feels like closing the circle on something that's been in the cooker for a long time,
That's what I said in an interview, exactly. I said it was about the time to close that circle, because some people just, relate to the album, and if this was a reference to the album, and it's still more a reference to and the story ends than to anything else. But yeah, for me at the very end, it was closing the circle, just, finishing it.
Don't break
the circle. I won't do with time anymore.
So is the album a full-on concept album like Nightfall at Middle-earth, or is it more like Imaginations from the Other Side, where there's a handful of songs that continue the story that you began?
The way I connected it would even make a complete concept out of Imaginations from the Other Side, because I was able to involve some Arthurian aspects into the story. Actually, if you bring it down to the point, it would be a sort of modern quest for the Holy Grail, and the protagonist in the story would be a sort of futuristic Arthur. And as mentioned before, the whole thing has a very strong dystopian frame. So everything which was somehow brought up on Imaginations will be reflected on this album, but it's a straight concept here, more like Nightfall and Middle-earth. There's a weird but straight storytelling.
Okay, so every song contributes to the story then?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you describe the story of Beyond the Red Mirror? I mean, I already know what it is, but to hear you say it would do a lot for me, I think. Just to clarify,
Yeah, it really goes back to the end of Imaginations from the Other Side, and in particular and the story ends where we see that boy standing in front of a mirror, and this boy is supposed to, take the jump through, and then becomes the chosen one in a different world. On Imaginations, especially on the cover, there are these two different universes described. The one is more sort of Arthurian fantasy type of world, and the other one has a lot of similarities to our world. And I'll leave it like this on Imaginations, and was always sure that the boy would have done the jump. And when I revisited that particular scenery, I just decided, the boy is a boy, and he is afraid to jump, and due to that, consequences occurred for both of the worlds, and both worlds underwent drastic changes into a sort of catastrophe. And this is documented on the album. And at the same time, we are going to accompany the boy who has become a man 20 years later on his quest to find back his memory and a way back to another dimension. And obviously this is supposed to be found beyond the Red Mirror, which is the final portal between these two universes.
So is the story concluded at the end of the album, or is it left open and the story ends?
It is left open, but that's also related to the Arthurian epic, because if we go back to Arthur and Mordred, we will find out that Arthur is stuck somewhere. The once and future king. The myth is still open. He more or less gets lost. This is the same thing which is going to happen with the boy. But if you listen to the earbook version, you get a sort of sequel with a song called Doom. But this is more dealing with another protagonist of the story, and this would be my sort of Mordred.
Do you feel that you identify with the boy in this story as far as the isolation aspect, or is it just a character that you kind of came up with and found very interesting?
Well, it is a character I found very interesting, and of course whatever I'm writing has some references to my life, but I've never been in an isolated situation. The opposite would be the case. So this is nothing which really has anything to do with my life or with the way I look at things. But as said, there's also always that connection. When we go back to imaginations, we find this person described, especially in imaginations, who has lost the ability, really to keep up his imaginations and to revisit these childhood territories. And this, of course, has been a very essential part on this album as well. And this is more from what I observed by, looking at different people or talking to other people. And so real life obviously has an influence on the characters and on the story.
I really like the way you approach creating your stories. I really admire you as a storyteller. Someday in the far, far, far future, when Blind Guardian starts slowing down, do you think that you would ever take up writing books or stories?
I would like to. I also have some nice ideas. I just wrote down the storyboards, and I think there are some nice tricky things which I could narrate. But when I did the liner notes for Beyond the Red Mirror and some more additional stuff, I just figured how difficult it really is, to write down something. And as you said, the time needs to be there to really keep your focus on just telling a story,
exactly.
Without thinking about music or how things go along with a musical concept. And then, yes, that definitely would be an option. But it takes time.
Yeah, and I can imagine, you've got this album coming up and the orchestral project and all of this other stuff. So, you'd probably have to do that when everything's kind of slowing down.
Yeah, definitely. I could, if it goes back to this story, because I have a frame and it's constantly developing, I could, basically do something like that while I'm on the road and, have to kill time. But usually I also like to hang around with the guys then.
Yeah.
And at the very end, I'm too exhausted, even if, my vision of, being more creative on tour this time is fairly precise. At the very end, once you're on the road, you're just wasted. And it's just great to do nothing but, playing the concerts and then surviving somehow.
Yeah, concentrate on one thing at a time.
Right.
Speaking of that, how many songs off of the new album are you going to be playing?
It's always a good question. I just started my rehearsals in general, and we were talking about a lot of old stuff which we have never played or barely ever. And I just figured the difficulties and the songs we are playing, they are played for a reason. You know, one reason is they are really appreciated by the people, but the other reason is these are really the songs which are performable. Some of the stuff like Battlefield or The Curse of Fairness is simply pain in the ass. yeah, to go through every night, you know, it's so harsh and so high pitched.
Yeah.
So not my range, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a different thing going into the studio day after day in like a comfortable environment where you can sing that high. But I mean, like most opera and concert singers, they would never go out on the road for months at a time like you guys do.
Right. And this is sometimes hard to explain because people don't see it. But, you know, if there was a song like Curse of Fairno and I had to do it once or twice, you know, no problem.
Yeah.
But playing 4, maybe 5 shows like in the US back to back, I can do it twice. And on the third day, we have to skip the number. You know, the same with Another Stranger Me or so, you know. This is even easier than some of the opera stuff. But, yeah, due to the schedule a metal band has, you have to be very careful with songs you're choosing. But back to your question.
Oh, yeah.
We are really working on 3 of the heavy songs at the moment, and they seem to be very doable. We started rehearsing a piano song today, which is called Miracle Machine, and we try to involve the band there, so it will be a slightly different arrangement in comparison to what we have on the album. I would say we prepare 5 songs of the new album to be performed, and if we end up with 3 every night, I would be very happy. It seems that the 9th Wave is going to be one of them, and this is a very significant song. So this alone is 9 minutes long, and people really will experience something new in terms of Blind Guardian, that's for sure. And yeah, as I said, I've just started working on old stuff, and we'll do some alterations there as well. So there will be a significantly different approach of songs once we hit the road.
Can you tell me any of the older songs you're going to be doing?
I need to open the list which we agreed on. I remember Guardian of the Blind was on there.
Ooh, yeah.
And this is doable, you know. The old stuff is usually fairly easy to say it.
Yeah.
But everything coming up from Nightfall, Middle-earth, all the songs we haven't played from Night at the Opera, they are a pain in the ass. I mean, it's just so damn difficult, you know. I'm having nightmares at the moment.
Oh, man. Well, I think you'll handle it. I mean, a couple of friends and I were drinking the other night and just watching Imaginations Through the Looking Glass.
Yeah.
And we were talking about you, and I commented how I like how if you don't go for the high notes, one thing that I notice is that you always are at least on pitch. Like, you'll sing the note, even if you can't go high, you'll sing the note and still sound great.
Thanks.
Just lower, yeah.
Yeah, I try to do that, and this is always doable. But again, due to the ranges and the keys some of the songs are composed in, this is becoming more and more difficult when we talk about A Night at the Opera, because there's no reference, you know. Sometimes the music is doing something completely different than the vocals, and if you don't go for the ones on the album, you get lost. It's different when we're talking about Imaginations or so, you know. Then you just go an octave lower, and it still sounds very nice. But you cannot do that with some of the newer stuff. I guess it would be the same with your stuff, you know. In Dysphoria, I would imagine there are some songs, you know, from what I've listened to, where the problems are quite similar.
Yeah. I mean, The Dying Firmament, coming up with a melody and a way to sing that was pretty challenging for me.
I can imagine. I was looking for the cues, and I was like, okay.
Crazy shit.
Yeah, it was good that I had your guiding vocals.
Yeah. We pulled it off, though. We pulled it off. So is the Ninth Wave going to be replacing Sacred as the opener?
That's at least an option. I don't know if we do that on spot, and I do not. If we do on spot, I do not know if we do it every night. But this could be a great option because the introduction of the song is so gigantic that makes even Sacred look small.
Wow, that's a big thing to say.
Yeah, but you will figure once you have listened to the first, 16 bars, there are no questions.
Speaking of Tolkien, have you seen these new Hobbit movies?
I saw part 1 and 2 and I like it.
Good.
I have no problems with it. I really love the fairy tale approach on the new ones. And yeah, the alterations as in The Lord of the Rings, they are at points questionable, but they do not really bother.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, if you had a problem with all of the additions and stuff to the book.
No, and one of the editors I've done an interview with, he just mentioned that the color of Legolas' eyes have changed during the 2 movies. And this was a big spoiler for him because they are blue in the Lord of the Rings and brown in The Hobbit, or the other way around. And I was like, okay, I'm probably a nerd, but I'm not that nerdy. That is absolutely okay for me. It is a mistake, of course, but that's like, people complaining about watches or whatever in a sci-fi movie, or, having the wrong shoes on. I don't care.
Have you seen the, well, I saw the third one last night, and if you enjoyed the first 2, you're going to love this one. It's very well done.
Great. I'm happy to hear. I'm going to do that over Christmas, I think.
Have you seen the Hobbit movie that was a cartoon that was done in the 70s?
Yeah.
How do you like that one?
I hate it.
You hate it? I loved it.
Yeah, Americans love it. I was too old when I found out about the movie. I went to the US in 1991 when I visited John Schaefer for the first time, and the guys told me about the movie, and I found it somewhere and bought it, and then watched it when I was 26, 27, and I knew the Lord of the Rings Bakshi movie at that point already, so I was completely disappointed, and this has never changed. I hated the musical approach, I just didn't like the sing-along. Usually I like sing-along stuff, but there it really, did not attract me. This was different with The Last Unicorn, which I saw a few years before, and which was kind of classy for me. But The Hobbit and also The Return of the King, that never really struck me.
Yeah, I didn't like the Return of the King, but I grew up with The Hobbit, so I think I'm biased on that one.
Yeah, I remember all the Iced Earth guys were totally into it. And they didn't know about the Bakshi movie, so I don't know if that has changed their perspective on the whole thing, but they were loving it. And Matt Barlow one day, he also brought the vinyl version of The Hobbit to me, and I like that a lot.
Good.
Just listening to the music is cool, but the movie was somehow strange. Maybe I have to revisit it again.
Yeah, it's really, really cheesy and corny, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What's the update on the orchestral project? Because I was listening to interviews of you guys from like a Twist in the Myth era, and it seems like it always just gets pushed back. Like next year, I swear, next year.
Yeah, next year, I swear. Well, almost there. We recorded stuff with the orchestra already. The songwriting actually is done for a few years already. I do have my first vocal session in February. And if things work out well, then I might be done with singing in the end of 2015, which would give us the opportunity to release the album in 2016. But my performance obviously depends a little bit on my physical condition after touring. And when we're on the road for 2.5 months in Europe, I'm usually not in the best condition afterwards to sing, with clean voices, which I am supposed to do in a lot of these cases. So we'll see how far I get in 2015.
By the time this thing is actually released, I think it's just going to blow everybody out of the water.
Yeah, I have the same feeling. The problem is that Beyond the Red Mirror is a really strong album. And it contains the metal band, which the orchestral album won't. So there's one great element missing, and the songwriting is on the same level, if not higher, but distorted guitars, they have some advantages, I have to say.
Yeah, definitely. Emphasizing the aggression in a part. This is a long way down the road, but I don't suppose that you've considered doing any live performances of the orchestral project, have you?
Oh, we discussed that a couple of times. I mean, the options we have with the orchestral albums, they are almost countless. I would guess we can go different directions, like, involving the band later on and doing performances in orchestra halls, but also in regular concert halls. That's a little open at the moment. I would at least guess that we do like a few showcases with it.
And then the last real question I have, and this is really for me, what advice do you have for newer bands trying to get out on the scene and make something of themselves?
First thing definitely is to be confident and just trying out, because people will always tell you that times are bad and that there definitely is no chance in, becoming successful, but exceptions always prove the rule.
Yeah.
And I would say in 95% of all cases, this new musician may find out that he simply is lacking something, but there still is a good 5% chance that you belong to the lucky ones. And no one else but you can really decide and judge if the potential is there or not. You definitely have to go for it. There's no other way in finding out. And another thing, as long as you can manage yourself, be in charge of yourself.
That's very valuable. That's how I feel. I just need to do everything I can to get myself out there, You
should. I mean, You have a strong band. The album is great. My wife, who also listens to metal, but does not like a lot, she loved your stuff. She said, well, that's a talented band. This means there is a potential, beyond the regular metal fan. And as long as this shows up, there should be a potential to become at least recognized. And this is something which might be more difficult nowadays, because even record companies, they are going quite strange ways, I feel.
Yeah, I've noticed more bands are just staying independent.
Yeah, and that's good. It's definitely not for the worse.
Excellent. Well, do you have any last sort of message? Could you give us some parting words? I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Yeah, great talking to you. Well, just enjoy the rest of the year. That's main goal. And then enjoy a new year with Beyond the Red Mirror.
Thank you so much, Hansi.
John, it's been great talking to you.